Center for Stress and Anxiety.
I remember nights where I would go to sleep and I would pray that I wouldn't wake up. I never considered suicide because it was against my religion. I got up every morning. I was sick. I'd have panic attacks. I'd take a shower. I would get dressed and I would go to work. And then when I got home, I would get in my pajamas and I would lay on the couch and I would just wait. I'm done. Please just let me go. I look back on that and it makes me so sad.
It's absolutely terrifying because you're no longer the person that you used to be. You're starting to become this person that's terrified of everything. I couldn't leave my home. I would go into panic and have anxiety at work. I would quit my jobs because I was embarrassed. I was afraid that someone would find out that, I'm hiding behind the filing cabinet having an anxiety attack, and I didn't want everybody to think I was crazy because that's what you think you're doing. You're going crazy.
As I was going through life and everything like that, boom, 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 boom. Just this big old hammer, just smacking down on me constantly. You can't do this, you can't do that, don't go there, don't say that. All I was a nail, and this big old hammer was just going to pound me right into the ground, and it might have just been a huge-sized coffin that I was pounding these nails in, because that's how I felt. I just felt dead inside.
I was off duty for about 4 months. I had both my neck and my lower back operated on, and on the first day back in, I was the engineer or driver. Our first call came in, and I pulled out of quarters, and I got about 2 blocks away, and all of a sudden I had to pull over, and the captain looked at me, and he said, "What's the matter?" And I said, "I think I'm going to die." I said, "I'm having a heart attack or something." I said, "I'm dizzy, I feel like I'm going to pass out." They called an ambulance out, and they took me to the hospital, and for the next 6 months, I went through a series of doctors trying to figure out what was wrong with me. I told my wife that since I couldn't drive fire trucks anymore, that we were probably looking at a minimum pension and that we better sell everything we own and get debt-free so that our kids could go to school. So I did. I sold the dream home that my wife and I had built.
I didn't really notice any bad symptoms of anxiety until I was, maybe 65. I don't know what brought it on. It's like my life got littler and littler.
It was right after high school that I started to have anxiety. I actually had a girlfriend who passed away in a car accident. I woke up in the middle of the night, I just couldn't breathe, and I actually went outside in my parents' deck because I just felt like I needed air. From then on, that is when I really knew that I was scared, and I didn't know why.
I never wanted therapy. I never sought it. I really tried to just hope it'd all go away. I was just not wanting to live. I don't know that there was any answers out there for me. I absolutely had no hope up until this point. I didn't want to exist. I really didn't want to exist.
I'm seeing the right doctors. I'm going to a psychiatrist. He tells me I'm not crazy. I'm going to a psychologist, and he's helping me the best that he can. I think I should get more help, but I'm getting the best that I can, and I'm getting worse.
My daughter was living in Ontario, and she was getting married, and they were having a shower for her. I was a nervous wreck knowing that how am I going to get on that plane? And I was sitting there waiting for us to get ready for takeoff, and it hit. It hit like the biggest storm ever. The sweat, the heart rate, the full-blown panic attack. And I just said to the stewardess, I said, "You have to get me off this plane. I am not going to be able to settle down." And then I just started to scream, and I said, "You have to get me off the flight now, or we're going to get up that air, and the pilot's going to have to turn around and land somewhere, because I'm not going to be able to stay on this plane for 3.5 hours." And I was embarrassed, I was crying, but I couldn't control the panic attack. The pilot said, "Okay, fine, we have to get her off the flight."
My mom would sit me down or tell me before I would leave that she might not be there when I got back. She would allude to the fact that she was going to kill herself. I thought it was my responsibility to make sure that those bad things that I feared did not happen. And that's that's when my panic attack started.
Well, my self-esteem plummeted. I lost all of my confidence, no independence. I just started to depend on people. I became a victim. You know, I just turned myself into a victim of these circumstances. And it was just an awful, awful feeling to be so powerless. And I figured, this is just terrible. I'm 35 years old, and this is it. This is going to be for the rest of my life. And I hate it, but I sort of just started to accept it.
I think I stayed in bed for like 6 months. I was just totally depressed. I didn't want to live anymore because it was too painful to watch myself just basically fall apart.
I became socially phobic. I was uncomfortable staying in other people's houses. I was uncomfortable traveling in other people's cars, and I lived in my own little world, and I didn't tell anyone. I would go to bed at night and just lie there and worry that I was going to become possessed, that I was going to become mentally ill, or that I was going to die of a terminal illness. Those seemed to be my 3 fears at about 14.
I think one of my biggest symptoms was I felt kind of dizzy and lightheaded, and I felt like I was going to pass out. And my biggest fear was, what if I pass out while I'm driving with my 2 young kids in the car? And that scared the heck out of me. And even if I was in a store, I thought, well, what if I pass out right here and then, you know, the ambulance has to come or something like that, and then my little daughter, who's just 2 years old, is standing there wondering what's happening to mommy. What if I never wake up? What if I end up in a mental institution? I mean, all those things were going through my mind.
After my first incident where I had to stop driving the fire engine, I probably went through a dozen or more doctors. I was in a shop with a doctor. She was a specialist on balance and inner ear problems. And she was having me do a bunch of balance tests, and they had strobe lights going and the whole bit. She finally stopped the whole thing, and she just kind of chuckled, and she said, "Why are we doing this?" She says, "I know what's wrong with you." She says, "You're having panic attacks." I can remember I looked at her and I went, "You're kidding, right?" I said, "Do you know what I do for a living? I'm a fireman, so I'm not afraid of anything." I said, "Do you know where I've been, what I've seen in my career, in my life?" And she said, "Well, it's real common with motor officers, with firefighters, with soldiers." She says, "It's the stress that you're under that you don't realize."
I work with couples and families and individuals, people who have problems in their relationships, people who have problems with anxiety and depression, addictions. I myself had anxiety disorder when I was in my 20s, and it kind of came on me very suddenly, and it was very debilitating. So I know the terrible feeling of anxiety disorder, the horrors of a panic attack. I've experienced that myself.
The thing that alcohol did for me is it numbed the depression. The depression was 24/7. I was able to work a job and really excel with it because I had learned to be a hard worker. And once I got home, I had nowhere to turn. My mom was a nurse. Pills were everywhere. In fact, when I started the program, my mom says, "Why don't you just take a pill?"
Anxiety and depression are 2 of the main reasons people miss work, visit the family doctor, and take prescription medication. Take control of your anxiety and depression, and you'll take control of your life. You'll think more clearly, have more energy, sleep better, and be happier. Take the first step right now. There is hope. There are options. Call for a wonderful free CD that will show you how.
It was unbelievable to me that you can do and you can achieve whatever you want.
It's motivated me to do many different things that I've always wanted to do. I was just so scared to do.
Feeling physically better. You know, suddenly I could sleep. Suddenly I was able to take my kids to Disneyland. I could do all these things and not be afraid that I was going to have to leave.
Before I found the Attacking Anxiety and Depression program, there wasn't a single therapy that helped me. Thank God for this. I am so blessed.
You want help with your anxiety and depression. You want to feel better. You just don't know what to do. Let the Midwest Center help you take the first step.
I think the program was wonderful. It was a miracle to me.
These are life skills that really, really do stay with you.
I cleared out my addict. Then I found me. And I found out I like me.
Like, I never get anxious, and I'll never have a panic attack the rest of my life, and I know I won't, because I'll never allow that to happen.
It was just so freeing, and to feel that heaviness come off of myself. There's hope. There is a way out of this.
Right now, there's someone waiting to talk to you who understands what you're going through. Call now for this wonderful free CD.
I was on medication after medication. I think every 6 weeks for a couple of years, I was being switched to a different medication and going through the side effects and weight loss and weight gain and nausea and irritability. It was horrible, and I was doing it to myself. I was on this quest for something that would make me feel better immediately.
And I'm getting angrier because there's nobody helping me medically. All the doctors will say is take, prescription and try another antidepressant and try this. And, they just kept switching the drugs around. And I said, but it's not helping. None of it's helping. So I finally went into therapy, and I just didn't find it helpful at all. I was just frustrated with them. I said, but I need to understand what I'm going through and why I'm going through it and how I can fix this.
I remember there was no safe place anymore. I couldn't talk to my mother on the phone. That made me anxious. I couldn't drive to my favorite grocery store. That made me anxious. I just was living in this little shell wondering how much worse it was going to get. And I prayed to God. And I said, please show me one person that's gone through this and lived and thrived. And I'll help you for the rest of my life. And the next morning, I woke up and turned the show on, and it was a woman talking about panic attacks.
When you're dealing with anxiety and depression, you go through so many different physical symptoms, and one of them is insomnia. And so anyway, one morning at 4 in the morning, I get up and I said, I'm going to switch on the TV. I'm not sleeping anyway. And then I see Lucinda. I'm listening to it. I'm going, oh my gosh, this sounds just like me.
I was so incredibly excited when I found the Midwest Center for Stress and Anxiety. I knew that I was onto something. I had found something that was going to work for me.
Nobody ever told me that it's about changing the way that you think. And that was, when I found the Taking Anxiety and Depression program, that was the major, major thing. And it's something so simple. I wish I would have learned before then.
The first thing that was so helpful was I understood exactly what anxiety was. She described it, she explained it, and she told you why it is and what it does to you physically and emotionally and the whole chemistry imbalance in your body. And I'm thinking, why couldn't a doctor tell me that?
I really enjoy working with people in therapy who are using the program because it is a great complement to the therapy. It's just great to have people kind of in that therapeutic environment for the entire week other than when the hour that they're with me. If people don't have access to therapy or don't particularly need therapy but have the program, they can do a really good job by working with this program and with the Midwest Center to recover from anxiety and depression. There's a lot of support from the Midwest Center, phone support, there's coaching support.
I could take a negative thought and run with it, and I could catastrophize the worst case scenarios. And talking with other coaches, I find out that this is probably one of the biggest obstacles for everyone. And certainly the clients that I've coached, that's the main focus that I work on.
My days started to change, my thoughts started to change, and it changed my life. It gave me the freedom to live my life. Because before, I didn't. I was too scared.
I had to give up my security blanket, and my security blanket was fear. My security blanket was do not go there. My security blanket was don't do that. Don't trust the world, because I was brought up in believing that it was a bad place.
It was a shock because it was like, oh my gosh, it's been me all along. Like, I'm the one that's causing this. But then when you find out that it is under your control and you can't solve it, that in itself just gives you that, okay, I've just got to follow this program. You don't want to listen to the fact that, you've been victimizing yourself all this time because you're very angry at the fact that you've allowed yourself to do that.
It was a whole different way of thinking because for a long time, people believed that people who were anxious and depressed were deficient or that they were sick or unstable or incapable of helping themselves. And the different twist that I saw to the whole thing is that, no, wait a minute. People with anxiety and depression are creative and intuitive and futuristic thinkers, and they have a vivid imagination. And if you could take all that creative energy that they're turning inward and making themselves sick with and turn it outward where it belongs, these people could conquer the world.
I learned what I was missing.